The Burrows of Berea is a conversational podcast. We study the Bible and we talk about it. Not all of us are of the same faith, and one of us doesn't actually have a faith.
And that's wonderful. We all love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burrows of Berea.
Welcome back to the Burrows of Berea. I am Rick Welch, and to my left is, Billy's not here. Billy's going to be late today, and Ralph Hicks is in Phoenix, I found out today, so he's not going to be here. And behind the glass is Rocket Man Andy Bishop. And to my right...
I keep trying.
I
keep trying.
I have been searching the internet for the sound.
The perfect sound.
I found it, but yours is better. It just is. Making the noise with your mouth. It's just so much better, yeah. And to my right is Cherry, the Annihilator Lewis.
Hello.
So today we have a very special guest on our Testimonies series, Sarita Edgerton.
Mm-hmm.
It's so nice to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so whenever I put out the ad, through Facebook and was asking people to come in, we got several people that signed up, and Sarita was one of them. We've been friends on Facebook, but I don't know how. I've got like 4,000 friends, but I think I know 7 of them.
Oh, yeah.
Because of whenever I was doing the films, I used social media, when I was doing like the ticket sales and giveaways and doing all that stuff. So I friended everybody possible. And so that probably happened because I friended you because you knew Amy Connor or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So you are here.
I'm here.
Glad. Yeah, we've been waiting on this. We've talked a few times.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been good to get to know you. So I always ask every guest that comes, the first question I always ask is, tell me the earliest memory that you have of when you heard about Jesus.
Well, I guess I always grew up in church. I guess that's what you hear about anybody pretty much born in the Carolinas. But I grew up in church and went to VBS and...
Vacation Bible School.
Vacation Bible School. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Rick. I saw you look at me when you said that.
I'm using vernacular Christianese, we call it. I'm using Christianese, and not everybody understands Christianese. But so I grew up going to Vacation Bible School, memorizing scripture. My mom sang solos and all kinds of stuff. And so from my earliest memories, I remember going to church. I remember being a part of a church, a Baptist church in Greenville, and South Carolina, not North Carolina. And yeah, that's my earliest memory is memorizing scripture. I even have the Bible that I won from memorizing the most scripture when I was 7. So,
yeah. So whenever, so in order just to get right into your testimony, I imagine you can probably walk us through from 7 to the current, right? And let us know. Because I'm always curious, like, okay, so when you got saved, was it around that time when you first heard it? Or did you feel, did it happen later in life? So take it away. I'm really interested.
So I would say I walked forward and I made a profession of faith at 7 and was baptized. And, for all intents and purposes, I guess I was a Christian, or at least I said I was. And I played the role really well. And then, like many Baptist churches do, we had sort of a split, and one pastor split off and went one way, and half the congregation went the other way. But my parents just decided not to go back to church. And I was about 8th grade. And, as a girl, 8th grade is a tumultuous time, and especially to have upheaval. And so we decided not to go back to church. And so I kind of fell away from the faith, if you will. I did FCA at church, at school.
FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes?
Sorry.
So you were an athlete?
No.
Oh.
Well, yes. I was a cheerleader, but they didn't consider cheerleading athleticism back then, but we were competitive. I did gymnastics, so I was an athlete. And, I led Bible studies, but I really was not a Christian. I did not have that profession of faith. And so when I went into high school years, I learned to play the role really well because it was kind of cool to be a Christian back then. You might know this. I went to a Petra concert and a Striper concert.
Wow.
Ooh, Striper.
Yeah, you know that.
Talking about.
Oh, yeah. I remember To Hell with the Devil. I had that album.
That was a good album. I need to download that on Spotify. But anyway, so I played the part well, and I was really lost. And so to kind of give you a reason why that is, let me go back to the very beginning. So I'm going to go back to before I was 7. My birth mother was 17 when she got pregnant with me. And I was conceived very shortly after Roe versus Wade went through the court system and went to the Supreme Court, and abortion was made legalized in all states. The father, my birth father, was very wealthy in the little town where I was born in North Carolina. I won't say where that is, but it's close by. And his parents did not want the disgrace of a child out of wedlock in this small little town. And so they offered her money to have an abortion. And that was not allowed. It was a new thing. It really wasn't allowed. And so she did the best she could to take care of me on her own. She got married to my stepfather at the time, who was a raging alcoholic. I've heard some of the other testimonies of the drugs and the alcohol and the damage it does to families and people and lives. And I lived that. I watched my birth mother be punched in the face, glasses broken, black eyes, and he began to molest me. My earliest memories are I was younger than 1, and the trauma that I experienced was very bad.
So you have a memory from that time?
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible to remember.
Usually
anything from that
trauma
early.
actually, that's why I say that I had very early memories in my life, because I had trauma in my life. And that's what happens in the brain. We don't realize it, but I mean, before 2 years old, you can have memories. If there's trauma, it really, it sticks.
And they've been verified. They're verifiable memories. They've been verified by family members. But when I told my birth mother that, and I'm not using her name because we still have a relationship, and so I'm just not going to bring her name into it. But she immediately believed me, which was sort of an odd thing for that time period. Now we're in the Me Too, we believe all women, but I was a 3-year-old, and I told her, I tried to set the house on fire to try to get out of, my grandmother had made me a rabbit fur coat. It was fake rabbit. It wasn't real rabbit for any environmentalists out there. It was fake rabbit fur. But I put it on the radiator and tried to set the house on fire. And to try to get out of the situation, I just was at 3 years old already wanting to die. And so when I was asked about it, I said, because he keeps doing these things to me. And so she believed me. So she took me to the one place that she thought I would be safe, which would be her mom's house, my grandmother. And from there, I ended up being adopted by my grandparents and moved to Greenville, South Carolina, and grew up in the upstate of South Carolina pretty much my whole life. So about the time I was 13, when all this happened with the church, I began to have these memories that I had repressed for many years about the abuse. But what I didn't realize is that my birth mother, my adoptive mother, my grandmother, had been lying to me about my birth mother. So I had these memories that didn't quite jibe with the story. So I began to doubt even my own memories. And so my adoptive mother manipulated me. She was a narcissist, and she's passed on. So I've been very careful not to say anything while she was still living, out of respect, because I do believe honor your parents. But she had manipulated me. And about 13, these memories came up, and I didn't know what to do with them. Hormones, puberty, this turmoil with the church. And I began to lash out at my birth mother, and I hate you, and I hate you, and I hate you. Why'd you do this to me? Why didn't you save me? Why did you let this man molest me? Because that's what I was told, that she allowed the molestation to go on, and she knew about it. And so basically we didn't speak very much, except at family, because I was adopted by her mom. So we didn't speak very much except at family functions. And it was always very contentious. And I was just broken. I was a broken kid. Didn't know what was going to happen. And I was a type A broken kid. So I have that type A personality. And so I fueled it and put it into academics. And I was the best. I was going to be the number 1 kid in my class. And I kind of went the opposite way of what most people do when they experience a trauma. I fueled that into
Success.
My brain. I wanted to be a success. I wanted to show my birth mother and the birth father who didn't want me that I could overcome what they had done to me. So I was adopted, and so I was raised as the 7th of 8 kids. So I had a little brother who was adopted as well within the family. The same thing happened to him. That's how we figured out that our adoptive parents had been lying to us for our whole lives. That's a whole different topic than what I'm going to talk about today. So this broken girl with, a dad who molested her, a dad who didn't want her, an adoptive father who didn't want anything to do with her, it was his generation. I go out and make the money. I come home. I'm not that kind of dad.
You recline on the couch and watch television and don't cook dinner?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Can I get an amen, Sherry?
Amen.
Well, that's about how it was. And he's still living, so I'm trying to be as respectful as I can in case he picks up on this podcast somewhere and hears it. And so anyway, I was searching for love in all the wrong places. And I found it in an older boy who was an adult. I was 17. And as my birth mother had found herself, I was pregnant at 17. Now, here I was, cheerleader, straight A student, honors, AP, going to college on a full ride, academic, pregnant. How stupid can I be? That's exactly what I thought. And then my mom is going to kill me. Like, she's going to kill me. Literally that thought. And I thought she was. I really thought she was going to kill me. So I tried to hide it as long as I could, but me and pregnancy don't go together. And I have to say that. And I've been pregnant 5 times now, but I get sick. I mean, morning sickness is a thing. And I experienced it to the full extent. And she caught me throwing up in the bathroom. And being that I was the 6th daughter, she knew what it was. I didn't have the flu. I could not fool her. And she said, we're going to march you right down and you're going to go have an abortion. You're not going to let this ruin your life. And I didn't know much about abortion, to be honest with you. I really had no clue about it. I just knew that.
It's not really something you talk about in the South.
No. And back then it wasn't even like my church that had talked about it, and they went out and picketed, and prayed and whatever. And so I didn't know much about it. It's just a clump of cells. It'll be fine. You'll be fine. You're going to do this and life will be back to normal. And so that's what I did. I made the choice, and I 100% accept the choice that I made, but the pressure was there. The father of the baby, my boyfriend at the time, he was like, I'll support you in whatever you want to do. But the church I had gone to that we had split from was protesting that day. So I had to go actually in disguise because they knew me. I went to high school with their kids, So I showed up in disguise and went in the back door, signed the paperwork, paid the money.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Can you remember how you felt, like, because you were disguised? Like, did you have any, you didn't want them to know? Did you feel shame, or what was going on in your mind as a teenage girl that was, in trouble, is where you were?
I did feel shame.
You did?
And it should have been a clue then. Why am I ashamed if this is something that's so good and it's something that's so empowering to women? Why do I feel this guilt and this shame? And I blamed it on those Christians.
Yeah, the need to hide.
Yeah, the need to hide.
You can't talk about it.
No, you can't. And so I go in and I pay the money, or he pays the money, and they take me back. And they had ultrasounds. And, this has taken a long time to come to grips with, but they wouldn't let you see it. Now in South Carolina, you have to have an ultrasound before you can have an abortion. You have to have an ultrasound. And it's so. And
do they show the mother?
Yes.
Oh, so to make them think twice? Is that what's happening? Or?
It's just to show them it's not just a blob of tissue, that it's a human being in there. So well, we can talk about that if anybody wants to ask me a question later. But so anyway, I'm back there. I'm sick to my stomach, literally. The nurse is like rubbing my head and holding the bedpan, saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. The doctor is down there doing the thing, and I'm crying and sick. And I remember thinking, this is the worst mistake I've ever made. But it was already too late. And so they finish everything. They take me back to the recovery room. There were several other girls in there about my same age. And I was crying and feeling automatically like I had done something wrong. But I didn't know how to reconcile the knowledge that I had with what I had done, because I had very little knowledge of what I had just done. So the girl next to me looks over at me and she goes, "Is this your first time?" And I was like, "Yes." And she, crying, and she goes, "You get used to it." And I remember thinking, no, I won't ever get used to this. And I vowed that day, I left and I took my birth control pills that they gave me like religion. But that day set me on a downward spiral that I likely, without the intervention of Jesus Christ, would never have overcome. So I literally go cheer at a ball game the next day. Like, we're never going to speak of this again. I pretended that all was good. And as far as anybody knew at school.
Such a strange dichotomy, like the day before what is happening, and then the next day we're cheering for sports and for
Yes.
people. It's
Just
an interesting, like, when you put side by side, like, it's a filmmaker's dream.
Life be like that, man.
You're right.
Your mom gets hit by a car and you still got to pay the power bill tomorrow.
I know.
Right.
Life goes on.
Keeps
Life
moving.
be like that.
Life be like that.
That's right.
But inside, though, Andy, my life stopped.
Oh yeah, no, I don't mean emotionally.
Right.
It's
Right.
just, we're talking about like the frames of life, what we
Right.
see, we know, we still have to pay the bills. Yeah. But
Yeah.
But that literally, I know you call them, some people call them watershed moments. This was the hinge. My life hinged on this day. And the next hinge didn't come for several years, but the hinge, I began the downward spiral. Now, on the outside, everybody thought I'm the same happy-go-lucky Sarita. And I always was. I was a pretty happy kid. I was broken, but I hid that well. I thought it was normal to have these broken feelings, this feeling of missing something, I know Christians use this term, but I had a hole, a void that couldn't be filled. And I tried to fill it with boys and sex. I got pregnant. So then there was this, and the hole was even bigger. It was a big, gaping, nasty hole.
why do you think that we do that? If you notice that, like, you grew up in a church, I grew up around church, you didn't grow up in a church, but you knew. Why do we hide everything? Have you ever noticed that? I mean, do we really believe, like, do we have in our minds that we believe that other people will think that we've got it all together and that we're holy or whatever it may be? It wasn't just a Christian world, it was our society, honestly. I think the Christian behavior had sort of permeated into society to where if you saw something, oh, that person is bad, then now you're marked for life. So what? You're not going to get a job? Or what? Like, why do you think we do it?
So I think it might be, when I've had some reflection time, and as I tell my story further, you'll understand what I mean, but I think what we think is that the world is going to judge us so harshly for what we've done, no matter what the sin is: alcoholism, drugs, cheating on our husbands or wives, abortion.
But the world judges us anyway.
But the world judges, there's no bigger judge than I was on myself.
Sure, yeah.
So when I'm pointing that finger and the other three are pointing back, you know how your mom used to say that when you point a finger at somebody, the other three point back at you?
Right, yep.
Nobody could be condemning me worse than what I was doing inside. I was literally beating myself up on the inside. And so I went off to college and I went on a full ride, and I was really excited about that until the drinking started, because I was trying to find a way to mask the hurt. I was hurting. I was hurting from the abuse. I was hurting from what I had done. I was hurting from relationships that didn't succeed. And I didn't feel like I had anybody. I felt I was alone in the world.
Were you aware of the hurt, or were you just living life and then you've learned that you look back at it later? Were you aware of it at the time?
At the time, no.
Right. You're just living.
I'm just living.
And you're drinking and having a good time, but you don't realize what you're doing. You're self-medicating.
You ever seen somebody who has cataracts?
Yeah, I had him.
Okay, and so sometimes if you have them and you don't know you have them, you don't know how clear your vision can be until the cataracts are removed.
When I got my lenses in, I was like, I can see.
It's a miracle. Yeah. So when you're living, like, I had lived with trauma since the moment I was born.
Right.
And I didn't know how to live without trauma. I didn't know how to live without that lens in front of my eyes that life was hard. And there are studies now that say that children who experience trauma really young like mine and maybe yours, you've alluded to, have I think it's the amygdala that controls fight or flight.
Oh,
that
yeah.
it's abnormally large. Like if you measure, like if I were to have my brain scanned, like the measurement of my amygdala, because I'm always in fight or flight. I'm always in fight or flight, and I don't know how to not be fight or flight. Even now, I live in fight or flight, and I don't know how to just be. The hardest verse in the Bible for me is be still and know that I'm God. I don't know how to do that sometimes. I don't know how to just shut it off. So I was...
Great verse, by the way.
Thank you. I was drinking. I was seeing lots of boys, doing lots of things I shouldn't have been doing. I try not to talk about that too much because my children will be listening in on this.
You're trying to hide it from your kids?
Not hide it, but that part. They don't need to know their mom's
Leave that till a
whole
later date.
thing. They don't need the whole thing.
Your mother was a human being,
Yes.
is what she was.
Yes. And
And
so
you are too. But you're not allowed to do what she did, so.
Kids don't know that about their parents.
no,
They don't.
definitely not. No,
Sorry.
they have heard my testimony before, but so I'm moving along. I drink so much, I party so much, I lose my scholarship, and so I have to take out student loans. And I lost my place on campus, and I was living with a couple of girls, and I was too much for them. Like, it was too much. And eventually they wanted me to leave because my lifestyle was not cohesive with theirs, and a little bit too much partying, a little too much drinking, a little too many people coming home with me. And so I met this other girl, and we decided to become roommates. And she and I are still very good friends to this day. And she wasn't a Christian. I wasn't a Christian. We weren't living Christian lives. We were in the same sorority. And life was just going on. And I graduated. I don't know how, but I got my grade point average up because I thought, I can drink and do this. And I did. I did both. And I managed to get a satisfactory 3.5 grade point average from college. So I'll take it. And I began to teach high school. And here I was, a 22-year-old girl teaching 18-year-old children who, it was a very trying time. And I see how teachers can get themselves into trouble. And luckily, by the grace of God, I didn't get myself into any Mary Kay Letourneau trouble. But
Does anybody know that reference?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the teacher.
I don't
And
remember.
but she was middle school. I was at least teaching high school,
student
right?
the student was Billy Falau was his name. And by the way, they
They're
are married
married and
they
have
have
kids,
2 children
yeah.
together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it worked out. I still don't suggest that
But
teachers
she went
do
to jail
this.
first
Yeah.
while he raised the kid.
Oh, that's so romantic.
I know.
Stressful.
So anyway, I completed my 3rd year of teaching, and I literally hated every minute of teaching. It is not for everybody, but I still was. I don't say I wish. I wasn't a Christian. I was broken still. I wonder how I would be at it now that I'm not as broken. We're all broken. It doesn't matter. I'll be broken till I'm 100 if the Lord allows me to live that long.
Yeah, whether you're a Christian or not.
He's still putting
You're
those
broken.
pieces back together.
We all have
you
our
know.
moments, yeah.
And so my friend who I roomed with in college was getting married to a boy that I had been set up with on a blind date. I met him one time and went, whoa, no, this guy and I won't get along. I was like, do you want to date him? She's like, sure. So they end up getting married. So
That's how we do it in the South, guys. The ladies just pass us from one to... I don't like this guy. You want him? Sure, you can take him. Okay. And he's just like, okay, I'll go.
well, he didn't know he was my blind date.
Oh,
So my blind date didn't show up, thank the Lord. And so she ended up on the blind date with him, and they ended up getting married. And so I go down for the wedding, and I say, are there going to be any cute boys at your wedding? Because it's always about, are there boys, right? She says, no, nobody that you'll be attracted to. So we're standing, having the rehearsal dinner, and I look across the aisle, and I see this boy. Now, I had this rule. I was not going to date anybody under 6 feet who wasn't blonde-headed and blue-eyed. Basically, Thor. And...
or a Hitler Youth.
Or that. I'm thinking more Thor.
Just kidding.
So, can you cut that out? So, I look across, and there is this boy, this young man, and I knew immediately that I was going to marry him. I don't know
Really?
how.
I always
don't-
hear guys say that. I've never heard a woman say that.
I
That's
don't
awesome.
know how.
Huh.
I don't know if that was the Lord speaking to me as a non-Christian or the Lord nudging me but he wasn't the guy because I was the tallest girl. So he wasn't a tall guy. He's like 5'10". So he did, and he's dark-headed and
Broke your own
brown-eyed.
rule.
I broke all the rules. And so, we get to know each other, and they get married on my birthday. And so we actually went out that night afterwards. And he told me that he was in love with me and that I was the girl he was supposed
On
to
the
marry.
first date?
The very first. We weren't even really
Wow.
on a date. We were on like a group, like the bridesmaids and groomsmen all went out to a bar to play trivia.
Is he from Greenville?
No, he's from the eastern part of the state,
Oh, okay.
PD region. He's PD boy.
Ah, okay. I only asked because that's something I'm very familiar with. I'll tell you a story later on about a man who said that, and they've been married for 55 years.
Well, we've
First
been-
date.
Wow.
Well, it was.
Can't imagine.
So
It's so crazy.
So they got married on the Savannah or on the river in Savannah. And so after we all got back from trivia, we went out on this dock and I told him everything. I laid out my life from stem to stern, what I had done, what had been done to me. I was trying to get rid of him. I was trying to give him an out. And bless his heart, he just didn't take the out I gave him. And here we are 22 years later and still married. But
Good on him. That's awesome.
yes, he wasn't scared by it. So we start dating. Come to find out, we had both driven about 3 hours to this wedding, and we live about 9 miles apart. And we didn't know it. We didn't know one another. And so we go back home, and he has, I don't know if you remember that movie. I think it might be Say Anything, but he had the rule where you don't call for 2 days, like 48 hours. Y'all remember that movie?
Yeah.
Was it Say Anything?
I want to say it was.
It was one of those old, like John Cryer, John Cusack movies.
Yeah.
So he had the rule, but see, I don't play by the rules. So I call him the next day and I said, a bunch of teachers and I are going out for my birthday. You want to come? And so he comes. And the next week he introduces me to his mom. So I knew it was real serious then.
And
Which-
on Saturday, they got married.
Right. Seems to be the speed there.
No.
Just kidding.
No. And so we began to date and we did know that we were in love, and as much as I knew what that was, but I knew that I didn't want to be without him. And so he had come to know Christ at 14 and had a really real conversion, but in college, as many people do, he kind of fell away from the faith, and a friend of his that he worked with invited him to a Bible study, and he went, and he decided that he wanted to be faithful again. He wanted to go to church again, rededicate his life.
Right.
I don't want to try to use the Christianese, but try to come back to the Lord.
Yeah, some people don't know the Christianese. That's
yes.
okay.
And so he decided to do that. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds fun. So we decided to go to an independent Baptist church, which it makes Southern Baptists look liberal. And so
You betcha.
are you familiar with it, Andy?
No, I'm just laughing at you. At the Southern Baptist.
He's not
looking
laughing
liberal.
at you. He's laughing towards you.
Got you. They weren't like the pants, you can't wear pants type of
That's
Baptist
right.
church,
Instead
but
of
they
the
were
Adventist,
No
right?
makeup, no jewelry.
no, they weren't any of that. They were kind of a liberated indepent Baptist church.
Oh,
So you could
neat.
wear pants on Wednesdays.
Oh,
On Wednesday.
And
Oh, it's pants day.
well, it's pants day. And I
wore leather pants the first day.
no.
Oh, okay.
I absolutely loved the church. It
Yeah.
was so different and so genuine from what I had known. But what they didn't know about us is that we were living together. Dun, dun, dun. Well, you know how that goes over like a lead balloon with a Baptist church. So we tried to join the church. Can you imagine how that went? So they came to our house to visit with us to ask us about our faith. Now, mind you, I don't have any faith. I'm just going because the man I love wants to go.
Sure.
And they said, well, we would love to have you be members of our church, but you can't live together without being married. Well, I pitched a fit and stomped right out of there. And I said, I'm not going to listen to this. But my husband, being as faithful as he is, decided that he was going to move out. He was going to do things right. He said, I'm going to court you the right way. We're going to do this right. And so that September.
And he did it?
And he did it. He paid 2 rents.
Wow.
Wow.
He is a godly man.
He really loved you, didn't he?
I do not deserve this man. Anyway,
That's awesome.
people tell me he outkicked his coverage. I'm like, no, he didn't. I outkicked mine. But so he, we went to church on pants night, Wednesday night, and
Pants night.
on pants night.
Not ladies' night, but
And
pants night.
No, yeah. I don't
Ladies'
remember
pants night.
even what the sermon was on. But I remember at the end, a good Baptist church always does an altar call, at least pre-COVID. I know they don't do them now because you can't touch one another anymore. But so you go,
What? I think I missed something.
an altar call, you can't pray with one another now that it's post-COVID, right? They don't do altar calls in Baptist churches.
No, I think you can.
We do.
You do?
We get that
Yeah.
COVID all up in us.
Dude.
We
I
ain't
think
worried
it's-
about no stinking coronavirus.
It's probably just by the leadership of church.
Probably, yeah.
Probably
church.
done. You're probably right.
I think everybody at our church has probably had it.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and if not,
yeah.
we gave it to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I'll accept. I've had it twice. So anyway, all that to say is I don't remember the sermon, but he did the altar call, and I remember thinking, I need to go. But I was scared. It was a big church, and I was scared, and they had already judged me for living with my boyfriend and all this stuff. And I was like, they'll judge me if I go down there. The little harlot, the lady at the well, the woman at the well. I barely knew that story, but I knew that it didn't go well for her at first. And so,
At least they didn't drag you naked out of a tent and throw you down in front of the preacher.
and try to stone me. Yeah, no, that's
John
right.
chapter 8.
Yep.
Just read it.
I did. I have read it. I was that lady. But, and so I look over at Mike, my husband, and I said, well, he wasn't at the time. And I said, I really want to go down. He goes, for what? And I said, I want to accept Christ. And he had told me that he loved me and wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. He said, but I don't want to do that if I don't know that I'm going to spend eternity with you, which I think is the most romantic thing like a man could ever say to a woman, especially now that I'm a Christian, maybe not before that, and he led me to Christ right there in the pew.
Your husband did.
My future husband led me to Christ right there in the pew.
Oh.
Isn't that
That is-
romantic?
That's awesome.
Yes.
So
That is so cool. I got to meet this guy.
he's amazing.
That is awesome.
He's amazing. He's an amazing dad. He's everything that my parents weren't.
Just so you know, Sarita's husband, I'm glad that you weren't a Hitler youth.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because all my children have just the most beautiful brown hair and brown eyes. Well, not all of them. Some have blue eyes. But anyway, so we eventually get married, and we moved to Savannah, Georgia, for my job. I had decided that teaching was just not my thing. I was going to go into sales, and that's what I did. I went into sales. So I moved to Savannah. We started going to a Baptist church. It's a Southern Baptist church this time. And they had a pastor from New Zealand as their head pastor, and he was the most amazing pastor. He said my name, Sarita.
Did he have the accent and everything?
Mhm, he did. He was actually a missionary from New Zealand to the United States.
Which is common, by the way.
Yeah.
Australia, New Zealand, they send missionaries to us.
Yes, his dad founded his granddad founded the Communist Party of New Zealand. He was an atheist. Andy.
You want to join the Communist Party, Andy?
Let's talk.
So listen, before you go, I got to say something. I was reading some early history because I'm getting ready for the church history. After Esther, we're going to kind of mingle church history from first AD all the way up, for the first century AD up to the present. I discovered when I was reading, do you know what the Romans called the Christians in the first and second century?
No.
Atheists.
Oh,
Really?
Because they didn't believe in many gods. They only believed in one.
And it wasn't enough.
And it wasn't enough. Isn't that crazy?
They also had
So
that
Christians
statue
were-
to the one god just in case they missed one. What
Yeah,
was that in
the unknown
Athens
god.
what was that in
It was,
Athens?
it was in Athens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when, because Paul launched his sermon off of that.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you about that unknown God.
Yeah, let me tell you
Yeah,
about the one with the capital G.
That's right.
Yeah.
But so in the first and second century, the Romans called us atheists. Isn't that crazy?
That
Well,
is.
that's
that is
interesting.
interesting. It sounds like the meaning of the word may have changed a little bit over time.
So
Well,
I'm an
it sounds like
atheist,
some-
just like, see, I'm an atheist, Andy.
Just like Paul.
I'm a first century, like, atheist according to the Romans.
First century atheist. Yeah.
I've been called worse.
Yeah. I've been called worse by better.
There you go.
That's awesome. Anyway,
So we get married. We move to Savannah. I moved to Savannah. We get married. He moves down to Savannah with me. And we're living there and we're going to this awesome church and we're serving the youth because I just felt that's where God wanted me to be. And I was soaking up every bit of the Bible. I was doing any Bible study that I could possibly do, I was hungry, and it was like, or thirsty, and I was being given literally the living water. I mean, I just don't know how to explain it other than I didn't know what I was missing, but I knew that some of the broken parts were being mended. And so we continued to go to that church in the year 2001, the third Sunday in January. And if you're a Baptist or a church that believes in that, it's Right to Life Sunday. It usually coincides around January 22nd when Roe versus Wade was passed in 1973. So they usually have some message, or depending on what church you go to or what denomination. Some churches don't want to talk about abortion because, heaven forbid, we hurt somebody's feelings in church. But our pastor, the one who was not afraid, got up and he talked about abortion. I'd never heard another Christian mention abortion. Like, other than my husband, and really no one knew, and my mom, no one knew what I had done. And I knew that all those pretty Christian ladies in their pretty skirts and dresses and all of that with their perfect Bibles and their perfect families would come down on me hard. Like the women at the well would not let that lady come in the morning time. In the cool of the morning, she had to come in the heat of the day. And I knew
I'm sure very little what you said about those people is actually true.
I agree.
I assure
we
you,
all know that, yeah.
I assure you it wasn't. But in my mind, I was terrified. So he gets up there and he is preaching from Psalm 139. I formed you in the womb. I knew you before you were ever formed. So the scriptures, and I'm like, I look over at my husband and I said, how dare you? And he goes, what? And we're in the middle of church service, and he's preaching up there, and I said, how dare you tell him what I did? He goes, I didn't tell him what you did. And I said, I can't believe it. And I got up, I got my Bible, got my purse, and I left the church. I walked out, and I cried all the way home. I was mad. I did the whole I'm not speaking to you thing because I still thought he had gone to the pastor and told him my story. And my husband, he has the patience of Job, and I am very similar to Job's wife in that I don't know why she didn't get destroyed by God, but
if you've never read that story, what she just said was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. He's Job, I'm Job's wife.
Curse God and die.
Yes. I'm like, how could you? You destroyed my faith in you. He said, do you think you're the only woman in that room who's had an abortion? I was like, yes. He goes, don't be so selfish. He said, you're not. You're not. And so I said, well, okay. Because he always manages to talk me off the ledge. He's just that guy. So this was before the internet, right? We had that old dial-up internet. It took you 20 minutes to actually get on the internet. So I hardly ever did it because it was annoying. And
America Online. You've got mail.
Yeah, that awful sound is like ringing in my head right now.
Can you hear it? Yes, I know you can hear it. Yes.
Yeah. Kids don't know what we're talking about.
And so the next day, I opened this thing kids called a phone book. And I opened it up to abortion. I didn't know what I was doing. But I knew that I had to have some help. So I was looking for a pregnancy center, someone that could help me. And the pregnancy center in Savannah called themselves AAA Pregnancy Center, meaning they would be the first in the yellow pages when you looked up abortion services. So I called them. I was like, I think I'm going to kill myself. I want to die. I've done this thing and nobody will accept me. Can you help me? Is there a counselor? Can you point me to a counselor who can help me? Because I don't even want to live with what I've done. And she said, well, we offer this thing called a post-abortion Bible study. Would you be interested in doing it? And I said, sure. She said, well, the next session, this session's already started. The next session won't start for like 3 months. And I said, I don't think I'll last that long. And she said, well, they meet tomorrow night and you have to have 48 pages read plus all the scripture. I said, done. I went and got the book, got the scripture. I met those ladies and the Lord brought me to healing for my abortion, what I had done. And so I could actually talk about my story without weeping, without feeling guilty, learning that I don't have to carry that shame, that when Jesus took the cross upon his shoulders, that was the shame he was carrying. That was mine. That was my shame. And I didn't have to carry it anymore. I was dragging around this dead thing that he had overcome. And I learned that. And through the Bible study, we learned to pray to God and ask if he would reveal what our child was, if the child had a name. And so very clearly, I didn't hear him say, because I've never heard the voice of God, and I don't, but the name John Paul came to my mind, my two of my favorite apostles. And because I so relate to Paul, I felt like I had done the worst of the worst, and I didn't deserve, until God knocked me off my donkey. But that's another thing, right? Isn't this called the Burrows of
That's
Berea?
right.
Yeah.
Burrows of Berea. Good job.
But
She was too witty for us. I'm afraid to say.
Yeah.
I was voted.
I was so enraptured with what she's talking about, I forgot the fact that we were talking about donkeys here.
So we had a memorial service. I'd never experienced anything like it. There were other women like me who regretted their decision. Other women who had spiraled down into promiscuity, into alcohol, some of them into drugs, depression, suicide. It became clear that we all had something in common. And we all had these symptoms of, I hate to use symptoms because that's a medical thing. We all had these symptoms, depression. We all suffered depression, anxiety. It manifested itself differently in different women, but we all boiled it down to, this is from that. What we had done was grievous. We killed a child. And when I came to that fact, when I came to know that I was 8 weeks along and I held an actual baby in my hand, or a model of a baby at 8 weeks, and how formed it is, whoa, it was life-changing. And the moment that God said, my grace is sufficient for even you. Mm-hmm. And when that grace washed over my soul, I can't even tell you how freeing it was, how free I was. And so the Lord saw fit to move us to Asheville. And I really didn't know much about Asheville, except when I grew up in Greenville, you would see they always got snow. So I was really excited to get snow, because it never snowed in Savannah and it never snowed in Florence, where we lived before that. So I was excited to see snow. That's really all I knew about Asheville. And so when I got here, the first thing I did after starting my new job was call the pregnancy center. And I said, do you have a post-abortion Bible study? And she said, well, we offer one, but we never have anybody to teach it. And I said, well, can I teach it? And so that started my ministry, to be with other women. And I guess maybe something I forgot to tell you, and I'll back up a little bit. That's allowed, right? I can back up a little bit.
Sure.
I don't make the beeping sounds when I back up, but
I can put them in.
okay, do that. So I had told my mother-in-law that first night I met her, my future mother-in-law, that I didn't want children. I never wanted children. Never. I didn't feel like I deserved children. I had done this horrible thing. I knew what I'd done was wrong, and I didn't feel like God should give me any kids. And this is even before I became a Christian. And so I kept that up right until the night of the memorial service for my sweet little baby in heaven that we had. And all of a sudden, I wanted children. I wanted a child. 3 days later, I had a positive pregnancy test, so I was already pregnant and didn't know it. And the redemption I felt was very real. And so I had her. She's 20 now. She's about to be 20. She's an amazing young woman. She's already married and wants to have kids. She's just going to be an amazing wife and mom. But so we move her and we move up to Asheville. And I realized real quickly I didn't want to live in Asheville. It had a weird vibe to it. It wasn't somewhere I wanted to be. So Hendersonville was close by. So we decided to live in Hendersonville. But I started this post-abortion Bible study, and I have taught that now probably 17 years, and I have taught various forms of it. We've done weekend studies. We've done weekly studies that last 11 weeks. I've taken time off to have, since her, 3 other children, so I have 4 living children and 1 in heaven, and 2 boys and 2 girls, and then my boy in heaven. And I have a son-in-law who's awesome too, so he's a good kid. So I have 5 living children now. I'll claim him. And but I just can't even tell you, teaching these women, every time I go through the Bible study, I get something more. The Bible, every time I open it up, I get something more. And I don't have to add or take away anything from it. It's just the Word of God speaking to me through that Word, and seeing these women when they come in and That's how I looked, beaten down, couldn't look anybody in the eye, ashamed, the shame of what I had done. And my thought is, if abortion's so right, why is there so much shame? If it's so right, why do we feel so much shame? Because we end the natural order of what God wants, the way He's created the family. And so watching them come in, all bent over, and we'll sit down and I'll say, everybody in the group, and it's usually no more than 4 women at a time because otherwise it's just too much. They can't share. And so I'll say, look at each other right now. Take a mental picture of each other. And then at the end of the Bible study, I'll say, okay, everybody look around. Who looks different? And every one of them smile. Every one of them are, their countenances have changed. God has changed them. And I watch it happen. And it is the most amazing thing. And so I've been blessed to be able to tell my testimony. I went back to the church that was protesting the day that I had my abortion. And I called the pastor and I said, I have bad-mouthed you for 10 years because I felt like you were judging me, but you weren't. And I would like to apologize to the church. He asked me to come and speak on a Sunday morning. He gave me the pulpit for the entire, a Baptist preacher doesn't give you the pulpit.
No way.
He gave me the entire the pulpit for the entire preaching. And basically I shared my story in front of the people I graduated high school with, who my reputation at the time was like I was pure as a driven snow.
Yeah.
They didn't know. But to a fault, or to a person, they came and spoke to me and said, what an amazing story. We didn't know. You didn't tell us. Well, no, I wouldn't have. I was a scared teenage girl. And then I was broken and, borderline alcoholic and suicidal. And they were just, but I'm not that person anymore. The Lord has changed me. And whatever you believe about the Bible, whatever you believe about Jesus, we can have that argument. And I like that y'all do in this room. But you can't argue about how God has changed me because you would not have recognized me at 21 years old.
Yeah.
I
I wouldn't
not
even try.
the same person. I don't even recognize me. And my mom, my adoptive mom, was never on board for me speaking out. She said it was embarrassing, and it was embarrassing to her. I said, but Mom, when the Lord presents the opportunity that I may speak freedom to the captives, that I can bring beauty from ashes, that He can bring beauty from ashes with my story, why would I not share to bring God glory? Mm-hmm. And so that's my story in a nutshell. There are other ways I could go with it, but people say, well, why do you talk about like the darkest day in your life? And I said, because the Lord told me He gave me a big mouth and I was going to use it to bring Him glory. So here I am using my big mouth on a podcast. I didn't never see that I would do that, but it's a story that there are other women. There are other women, Christian women. 1 in 4 Christian women have had an abortion. And they're sitting out there thinking, all these perfect Christian ladies with all their families that look so perfect and the little kids all in matching clothes and they teach Bible study. I was that woman. And they're sitting there. And so while I am not the person that is out at a pregnancy center, walking around with my son, I am on the back end to let women know there's nothing that you can do that can separate you from the love of Christ if you know Him. Mm-hmm. If you know Him, do you know Him? And that's all I want, because He can take what I meant for evil and use it for good. Mm-hmm. And I've had probably 50 women come through this Bible study. It doesn't seem like a huge amount of numbers, but to the one lady who is now free from her burden that she has carried, it's a lot.
A lot of these testimonies end up being very similar, don't they? So far with the people that we've had in here, and it's, make choices that you think that can't be overcome, and before I was a Christian, I went through multiple types of therapy, and I gave it the good old college try, even when I was in high school, for therapy.
Does that count as your joke for the day?
Not a chance, pal. And Sarita's got one. She told me she's bringing one.
I did. I brought one.
And I've got a great one. It's the best one I've ever done.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll
But,
be the judge of that.
Yeah. So something that I can say this, I've learned this from Andy, actually. She's looking at him like, you're crazy. They can't see you.
Okay, so I'm going to do this real quick. So the way I set up the mic, I'm in a different room because I'm just like, I fidget and I walk back and forth and look at the computer and stuff like that. So it's just easier if
Yeah.
I am in a separate room. But for a testimonial, I set the chair up looking towards Rick and Cherry, especially because people usually just talk at Rick. So if I don't put the mic over there, they'll just talk around the mic. So when she wants to see me, she literally has to like crane her neck.
Yeah, she's
So-
done a really good job staying with
Yeah.
the mic. So you've obviously done some public speaking, like you said. But
Anyway, sorry.
But when we talked about the church earlier, the pants,
Yeah.
Pants Wednesday or whatever, and we give them a hard time. And I've given a lot of churches a hard time in here. And one of the things that I thought about is, Andy sits in here and he listens to us. And he's very respectful. Like he might have some difference of opinion, but he's respectful. And I need to ask forgiveness of a lot of people. I'll just go ahead and say it. Like when I make fun of you or I say, I do apologize, because if you are in a church and they only want you to wear skirts, then and you're comfortable there and you're worshiping there, then by all means go and worship. You can worship wherever.
Absolutely.
If you don't want to wear jewelry because you feel convicted about it, then do so. I don't want to make the mistake. Paul mentions this many times. We don't want to hurt
No.
other people. And he's been great in here. Just listening and putting up with the some of the silliness. But
It's almost never the religion. Every once in a while, there'll be a social thing where I'll bite my tongue, just like, I'm leaving that alone. But it's never like the religious stuff. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Hey, man, whatever gets you through the day, it's not hurting other people.
Yeah, well,
that's good stuff.
The good news is Elon Musk bought our show. You can't talk, so. We'll talk about that social
if
issue
I
some other day.
advertise for him. As long as I slip in little positive mentions about associated properties,
Yes.
then I'm good.
I thought it was interesting that everybody was so excited that when Elon Musk, purchases it out, that Donald Trump could come back to Twitter.
And he won't.
He won't. He's going to stick with his own Truth Social, which is horrible. Have you seen it? It's terrible.
Come on,
Anyway,
man.
you're on it? You like it?
No, it's all right.
It's got to be a weird echo chamber of
It's weird.
just one thing.
It's bizarre. I don't like to just be around like-minded people. I think we grow when we're around people who aren't like-minded. Rick and I had a conversation on the phone the other night. Like, I don't believe some of the things he believes about the Mount Olivet discourse.
You are in good company.
But you did really, I told him this on the phone. I said, you did really get me thinking about the Lazarus thing. Like, I wanted to go back and do a little bit more research and find out that's pretty cool thinking. It doesn't make a difference, heaven or hell, but it really gets you thinking. And that's how we grow, is to not be inside our own echo chamber, like Andy said. And so I know that not a lot of people will come and speak about abortion and being pro-life. And if you ask me, and I'll tell you I'm pro-life in all instances. And I know that will push some people but I've experienced it. And what we don't talk about, and we do as a society, going back to the social issues Andy mentioned, it's a woman's choice. It is you can do this. If you're not ready, you can do this. And yes, that's how we've designed our society, that we can do this. We can have an abortion if we want to have a career. I have a career. I have 4 kids, but whatever. All that to say is what we don't talk about is the damage that it does to the woman after. Some women never recover. Some women become so like Pharaoh, hardened. Their hearts are hardened. And you'll hear people be interviewed, and they'll be like, I had an abortion and I had to have it again. And, I never want to be so calloused that the loss of a human life, no matter when it begins, no matter where it is, whether it's in utero or out, I never want to be callous to the point where it doesn't give me pause, at least for just a minute, and think, what are we doing to ourselves? What are we doing to our society? And you want to talk about societal issues. The number one demographic for abortions are African American women. More African American babies were aborted in New York in 2020 than were born alive.
Really?
Yes.
I've heard some of these statistics before, and some of them are absolutely false. I'm not going to
Do you think that
spend the
one's
time.
false?
I don't know, but I'm not going to spend the time Googling right now, but literally statistics just like that.
They can be yeah.
Oh, you really got to double check those, because absolutely have heard one statistics, not that one exactly, but very much like that. Absolutely incorrect, or really good with the, how do you define this?
Well, for those who are
to make
listening, feel
numbers
free to
happen?
Google it and
Yeah,
see.
I would
Perhaps it's
Google
true.
it
Who
and
what
make
would be
sure
the
your
best
source
government-
isn't crap.
What government agency would we search for that kind of information? What do you think?
That's a good question. I would just Google it
Planned
and start
Parenthood?
picking through it.
Planned Parenthood?
Would they have every abortion though?
They're by law, you're supposed to report them, except California.
Okay.
By law, you're supposed to report.
Well, there you go.
So, but the statistic you can't argue is there have been 61 million abortions in the United States since 1973, and that's only ones that are done in the abortion clinic. That doesn't include ones done in the hospital or in the state of California, who does not report their numbers. And as big as the state of California is, it's more than that.
I've always wondered. So as I grew up, I've told many times, I stayed with this family, the Rileys, a lot, and they are pro-abortion. So I grew up around it, and I heard the arguments from both sides. As a child, I heard these arguments because that's one of the things that we did was listening to, to debates while we were kids. It's just really bizarre, but
That sounds like a fun time.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot from that, but I guess the thing that always, it always hit me is, we have a culture where we don't talk about our problems. Like we do, but we don't, right? So we can go on social media and blast things, or go on through the internet, and we feel more courageous perhaps to say something, some arbitrary thing or whatever. But if we're person to person, it's harder to come out to people about maybe what your problems might be.
I mean,
Right.
that's so much of her story, right? It's the isolation
Yes.
of believing in other people's perfection and worrying about the judgment.
That's right.
That's isolating.
That is absolutely. And so I
And
wonder.
that's devastating.
Sure.
Isolation. People are pack animals, man.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, isolation is bad.
We've talked about that many times, that it's the herd mentality, right? So I always wondered, so if there was a young woman that was about to have an abortion that's hiding it because they are isolated, or they have been abused, or whatever it might be, and they've made the determination that I can't be a parent, they don't know all the ins and outs on perhaps how to have a child and then give it up for adoption, or maybe they just don't even want to go through all of that. They're making these decisions that if they were able to talk about it, if you were able to look, if I were to look at you and say, listen, why don't you, if I asked you, your young self that was about to, to abort the child, why do you want to do this? You, apart from outside of everybody, just to have a talk and say, why is it that you want to?
Because my mom told me to.
So that would begin a new conversation.
Right.
Whatever that answer would be a new conversation. Perhaps it is, I'm not financially able to take care of a child. I don't have any support from my family whatsoever. And so then you can have these discussions. And I think that, you're teaching these post-abortion classes, which I think is phenomenal, because there's some people that have already done it and they're damaged either mentally or physically or whatever happened to them. And you're talking to them and you're giving them a sense of hope. And what I want to do is try to get that sense of hope earlier. And I'm not saying that you aren't. I'm just saying that from your testimony, that's where you are. And I want to get that sense of hope. Picketing is not the answer.
No.
Because it's very scary. The people are, you're going to hide yourself and you're going to do it whatever. You might even be that kind of a person that says, I'm going to be belligerent just because you're being belligerent. And I'm going to go in here and do this, not even realizing the ramifications of what they're doing.
At any rate, it's almost always going to be alienating.
Yes.
In
That's
the moment
right.
and not helpful.
It's not helpful, and which is part of the reason I don't do it. Now, I do volunteer at the pregnancy center in Spartanburg. It's called Carolina Pregnancy Center, and I volunteer once or twice a week for an afternoon or a morning. I see clients who are coming in for pregnancy tests. And so we find out then what their intentions are. We always are very upfront with them. We are a Christian ministry. But what is your, what are your intentions? If they say they want to keep the baby, we help them get WIC and Medicaid, and we tell them we want to help take care of their whole family unit, which sometimes is just them and the future baby, right? The baby that's inside of them. Then there are women who they're dead set on their choice. They're going to have an abortion. And we tell them, ultimately, when you leave here, you have to make that decision. But let me tell you my story, because I want you to have all the information. This can be, not necessarily will be, it can be damaging to your psyche. It can be damaging to your emotions. It can be damaging, to your life. You think it's an easy fix. It's a quick relief. The problem's gone. I don't have to share it with anybody. I just have to come in here and get this pregnancy test because I can't go to the abortion clinic without a positive pregnancy test. And so they come in because we'll do it for free. Mm-hmm. And so I counsel them. I share with them my story. I always share with them about Jesus and how much he loves them no matter what decision they make. That it doesn't matter. He doesn't want them to make that decision. But if they do, he still loves them.
Which always comes down to the definition of life.
Right.
That's really what I learned as having those debates as a child, is that how you define life, because that they're picketing because they're trying to be the guardian for that unborn child's life, right? That's kind of the idea in their mind. They're coming out and saying, let's save the child. This is the child. It's it's inside you, but it's alive. It has a heartbeat. When does a heartbeat start for a baby? How early does it begin? When, could that baby live outside of it? Does it matter? At what point, that's where all these arguments are. And boy, I tell you what, we're not going to be able to stop the heat. Let's just be real. Mm-mm. It's heated for reasons. Some people don't believe it's life until after so much time. Some people believe it's life from conception and from just the very first moment. Regardless of any of that, regardless of the arguments and the heat and all that, if we have not love, then what do we have?
We're a clanging cymbal.
That's all we are.
Yeah. And that's how I approach these ladies these girls. Sometimes they're girls.
And it should be anybody in any state.
I approach them with love.
Yes.
I love
understanding.
You. I understand where you are. I have been there. I've sat in that chair and no one told me what was about to happen.
Right.
No one told me. If somebody I don't know if I would have changed my mind.
That's right. You may not have.
I don't, but if somebody had just given me all the facts, I was 8 weeks. The heartbeat was there.
If they had gave you that little tiny thing and said, "This is that little tiny baby that you had
it would have
held,"
changed my mind. That would have changed my mind.
That would have changed your mind. Now but then again, they might say that's psychotic. You can't do that because of whatever reason. Like that baby can't live outside of you at 8 weeks. It's not going to make it. Do you see what I mean?
I know.
If it can't live outside of you, then is it alive? Like the arguments never cease. They don't.
So the question for me, I'm sorry.
I don't think I'm pretty alone here. I don't think it's particularly material whether it's alive or not. I think it's a human being, and I think individually we are important. You're important. You're important. You're important. We're all important. As a species, the earth is littered with us. We're not that important. It's just we're important to one another. But, from 100 feet in the air, we're just damn ants.
But but I disagree with you on that one.
We're going to disagree. I don't think people are. I think you're special. I think anybody I know is special.
Sure.
But in 2 generations,
so many billions
be
of
remembered.
people. Like whatever. People aren't that important. They're just not. We're important to ourselves. We're important to the people we immediately know. But we're not important.
But you are.
Maybe to you.
No,
like you'd be sad. That's nice.
I'd be sad about you.
Yeah, but the whole world just kind of piles on. There's more people coming. Just fine.
I get where Andy's coming from.
It's fine.
I mean, I
Yeah.
have
It's not
read
that big a deal. I'm
I've
not
read-
saying go kill anybody.
Right.
I have
But
read
it's just
Mein
like,
Kampf.
it's fine. Whatever.
Right.
I've read Mein Kampf. I get it.
Unfortunately, you know,
I've
you've
never
heard,
read. I've never
I was
read mine.
kidding.
Well, you've
Thank you.
heard
That's
it.
good.
People have said to you, it doesn't become real until it becomes real to you. Like
Sure.
if you look, I mean, think about it. If you're looking out at the number of people that actually populate the world,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
billion.
even really like fathomable in your mind.
And
that
it is
number.
like the people that we choose to, the people we don't know that we choose to care about is very telling. A lot of people die way young all the time, but we choose to care about particular ones, and we just fail. We don't choose to not care, but we just fail to care about other people. And it's because of access. It's because what kind of becomes in front of you becomes real, and the real is what we care about. But there are a lot of people, children, whatever, viable human beings, very nice, healthy, educated, smart, good, loving people. They die all the time.
Yeah, sure.
All the time. And we can't. It just, you don't even know it.
But see, I personally believe that Christ died for all of them. That's just my belief. Okay.
Well, that
And it's-
takes care of their afterlife, sure.
it takes care of their life because he gives you an abundant life here, not just eternal.
Not everybody gets an abundant
An
life.
abundant life isn't
Abundant life
possession.
doesn't mean money.
Yeah,
abundant
but
life is not possession.
Some people have horrible, brutish lives where they scrape and struggle the entire time and then die horribly.
Yes, just
Even that happens.
You're describing the
frequently, too.
disciples, like
Yeah.
most of the disciples that were like that. And because of what those men did and the sacrifices they made, the persecutions they went through, that message made it all the way to me 2,000 years later. And it changed my life.
It
and
literally
it saved my life.
changed time.
It saved my life.
I'll agree with that. It changed all of human history.
It
certainly
changed my
did.
life.
And it's my belief that Christ died for the ungodly, which means every single human being that was ever born. That's what I believe. I'll never change my mind. It'll never happen. I just
Because
believe
I have
it.
changed my mind. I changed my mind from not being a believer to being a believer.
He changed my mind.
He changed my heart. It
Yeah.
wasn't just my mind. He cleansed my heart. But so I only have, I don't really try to get into pro-life, pro-choice arguments too much with people.
They're right. They're usually unproductive, to be fair.
They're
They
not.
are.
And I'm
Yeah,
not-
they're unproductive. You're
Typically,
right.
somebody who wants to engage in that is already
They're the
has their
same
mind
people that
made
put
up.
turds on my wall.
What?
He got somebody. It was an advertisement. Somebody got advertised to, and they posted a turd on it as a reply to his
A real
advertisement. No, no.
No, it was just a
picture
meme.
of a
Picture of
meme.
one.
You
Yeah.
clicked on my timeline, so this is for yours.
Yes,
Wow.
So
At least
really-
you're sharing. Sharing
Yeah.
is caring.
sharing is
Yeah.
caring. You know what? They gave you their attention and time. That's
I know.
valuable.
They did.
Resource.
Obviously, that hurt my feelings. I brought it up in 3 podcasts, man. Thanks a lot, lady.
So really the only...
It was a woman.
It was a
Oh,
woman
it was a woman.
atheist.
Come on, lady. Be classy.
Right.
Anyway, so the only thing that I will ever get into, the only question I'll really ever ask a person who believes differently than I do or who believes the same as I do, because you'll have Christians who say, well, it's okay if it's rape or incest. And my question is, because I think that's the weakest argument from another Christian, maybe not from an atheist or from a non-believer or of another faith, because we don't believe the same about the value of human life. But what he said is correct. It's human. Is it life or is it not? Mm-hmm. Is what's inside
Well,
of
and
us
his argument-
life or is it not?
To be fair to him, his argument was,
something different.
there's
yeah.
plenty of them.
Yeah, there's plenty of people. We're all ants.
My thing is like that argument. Is it human? Is it a life? I don't think that's even the right argument. I think the people that are having that argument are trying to convince people. God, how do I?
So
even
what
say
are
that?
the right questions then?
They're right
We should
questions.
turn you around.
Yeah, I know, right? This is ridiculous.
This
She's going to have a
crane.
crick in her neck.
I mean, I don't know what the right questions are. I mean, I'm just like, to me, it's just Every person is an individual. I have to respect
Can I ask you a
that is
question?
an incredibly difficult decision.
It is.
It is always a difficult decision. And if it's not a difficult decision, that is telling.
Yes.
That is correct.
And like all I can do is just be like, you're you, only know you know your circumstances. I've got to just put faith in you to make the decision that is best for those set of circumstances.
That's fine, and I'll let you say what you're going to say. But that's fine. But
I'm done.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but my opinion, what I was saying earlier was that if we take a step back and say, I hope you make this, it's kind of like more isolation.
Well, I mean,
If we ask the question, look, is there anything that I can do? Like, okay, look, you're in this situation. Do you want to be in this situation? Okay, you want to get out of this situation. Do you know that there's all kinds of ways to get out of this situation? You know, don't
that's
isolate
not
them.
necessarily like what I'm
Okay.
advocating. That is one way to interpret an extension of what I'm saying, but it is not actually.
Do you ladies like watching two men debate about abortion?
I know. Trust me. That's
different.
already occurred.
Well, here's my thing on that.
Okay.
And that's a very important point.
Yeah.
We have so devalued the role of fatherhood in our society
Yeah, I agree with that.
that you now have no say in the 23 chromosomes that you just gave that woman because she carries that life inside of her. You now have no say in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have so diminished the role of fathers and men in our society. Like, you two are white men, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, y'all are screwed. I'm raising two white
I feel
boys.
fine.
And they're screwed.
Yeah. I'm actually doing pretty good.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, but in society, y'all don't have a say about what goes on with this human
In
being
that
that you
particular
created.
instance, yeah.
Yeah, in that- there's-
And you don't have a say typically. Well, it's my decision. And most guys will say, yes, it's your decision. Maybe, and it is a difficult decision, but maybe instead of my boyfriend at the time saying, I'll support you in whatever decision you make, if he had said, and I don't know if this would change my mind, I want to support this child. I want you to have this child. I think it's wrong what you're doing. And somebody had spoken truth to me, maybe I would have heard it. Because all I was hearing was, you're not going to ruin your life with a baby. If they weren't denying it was a baby, my mom was not denying it was a baby. You're not going to ruin your life by having a baby. You're not going to ruin your life. And that's all I heard.
Sure.
I didn't hear any love there. So when these ladies, these girls, these women come in the center, I want them to hear, I love you. I'm here for you.
That's why you're there.
That's why I'm there. I
You're
told you
not
on the
there
phone
for
the
any
other
other reason,
night
yes.
that I want to be the adult I needed and didn't have.
That's right.
That
And
would
that's what they
listen
need.
unconditionally. Because I'm going to go back to the New Zealand pastor, Pastor Balson. When I shared with him finally why I walked out of the church service, and I shared with him what I had done, he stood up, came around his desk, and threw his arms around me. And I could still hear his news. He said, I love you so much, Sarita. And I love that. He calls me that. And
Sounds like a snack food, but
it does. And well, maybe.
I think I'm going to go get a pack of Sarita's on the way home.
Sarita's, yeah. So, but he just accepted me. He didn't give me any advice. He didn't tell me it was going to be okay. He just got up. My husband was in the room. He got up. He came around the desk and he put his arms around me and he said, I love you. And most importantly, Jesus loves you. And that was all. And it was just like, I cried. I cried right there. And just as hard as I had ever cried before, because I'd never really felt, other than from my husband, I'd done this horrible thing. And yet he loves me. And it was a picture of how Christ loves us. We've done these horrible things. I've ranked my sin, abortion, over your sin of telling a lie. But God still loves me anyway, because he sees all sin the same.
Yeah. And I call that the Goodwill Hunting moment. If you've ever seen that film. Have you ever seen that film?
I've literally never seen it.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, I know. It's
Wait,
kind of
what?
a classic.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I know. I've never seen it. It's
So
not on
Robin
purpose. It
Williams-
just didn't
It's
happen.
way outside your brain, though. It's hard to get around it.
I'll make a very, 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 very brief little snippet here for you. So Robin Williams is playing a psychiatrist that is working with Matt Damon's character, Will Hunting, who was severely physically abused as a child. And he's in college. He's a genius. And he pretty much gets rid of all of the psychiatrists because he outwits them all the time. But Robin Williams is kind of like a community college professor. And so he can't outwit him because they're both from Boston, from Southie. And so they get to this place, and you just have to see the film where it comes to where he looks at Will, at Matt Damon's character, and he says, "It's not your fault." And well, he's like, "I know." And he's like, "No, listen to me. It's not your fault." And he's like, "Yeah, I know." And he's like, "It's not your fault, son." Like, he knew that kid still blamed himself. Yeah. He knew that he was the problem in his mind, but it really wasn't him. He was reacting to all the things that he'd been through. He was just this other self, right?
You can definitely be like, have a conscious knowledge of things like that, where you're like, I didn't do this, and at the same time hold the responsibility.
Like,
that in
moment
your heart
for you is like, you've held all this in, and then you just had a man that means a lot to you, that comes around and loves you. And it's like, we know Jesus loves us, but it's a lot of times it's nicer to get a hug. It feels nice to just get a hug,
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, you were going to read something.
No, I was just going to tell my joke now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's about time for a joke, I think.
Okay.
It's not an abortion joke,
It's
please.
not an abortion joke.
Yikes.
Nope.
Yikes.
That would be a little uncouth, but
Yeah, it would be.
an engineer dies and goes to hell. He's hot and miserable, so he decides to take action. The AC has been busted for a long time, so he fixes it. Things cool down quickly. The moving walkway motor jams, so he unjams it. People can get from place to place more easily. The TV was grainy and unclear, so he fixes the connection to the satellite dish, Elon Musk, and now gets hundreds of high-def channels. One day, God decides to look down on hell to see how his grand design is working out, and notices that everyone is happy and enjoying umbrella drinks. He asks the devil, "What's going on?" The devil replies, "Things are great down here since you sent us that engineer." "What? An engineer? I didn't send you one of those. That must have been a mistake. Send him right back up this minute." The devil responds, "No way. We're going to keep our engineer. We like this guy." And God demands, "If you don't send him to me immediately, I'll sue you." To which the devil laughs and says, "Where are you going to get a lawyer?"
That's cute.
Sorry,
Pretty good.
lawyers.
That was great.
Oh, they must be used to it.
I'm sure they are.
Have to be.
Do y'all
I
have
don't
any
have
more
to tell
questions
you.
for me?
Do you guys have any other questions?
Let me try to think, because we've been like so from the main plot here.
I don't have any questions.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for coming. It's always nice to hear other testimonies. You had mentioned people ask you why you talk about the darkest moments, but that's what he brought us from. He brought us from those darkest moments.
Into the light.
Yes. And so when we reflect back on that and just where we've come from, and that we didn't come on our own, obviously, because we could already see what we were doing to ourselves, man, that's just what you want to just say to everybody. Look, if you're out there and you're in this darkness and you're broken and you're just struggling, God's there. And that's what gives us that hope. That's what gives us that light. That's what makes a difference in our lives. All jokes aside, kind of, but I got saved on a Wednesday night in a pair of blue jeans and a t-shirt,
Yeah.
pants night kind of, but
Ladies' pants night.
I wore myself because I didn't care at that time. I was just going to church. Wasn't, a big deal to me what I looked like when I went, but man, it's just great to hear testimonies of everything. It doesn't matter whether it's drugs, whether it's, abortion. And I mean, there's all these things that nobody wants to talk about, to admit. If you want to talk about it, you want to talk about it because you want to talk about what everybody else done, but you don't want to talk about what you did. No. And so it's great to hear that. And then, to hear that the same thing, the common thing in all of it is that Christ, no matter what we had done, no matter where we were, came to us in that moment, and he loved us and he saved us. And that's who we are now. And are we perfect? No, we're not. But we can share those stories to people who may still be in a position, whether it's they're lost and don't know him, or know of him, but are still struggling with things that we have done, to come to that and hear, that there's always an overcoming of that. Mm-hmm. And that's just a blessing to me. I love it.
Well, I do want to say, I'm sorry, Andy, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Ahead.
But if you are a woman who's had an abortion and you feel lost or isolated, alone, like we talked about, you're not. And there are women besides me. I'm not the only one. Praise the Lord, because I'm not the greatest one even. Not even, gosh, I might be the least of these. But there are women who want to help you. And you can reach out to your local crisis pregnancy center. You can find me on Facebook, Sarita Edgerton. I'll be glad to talk with you, point you in the right direction. Some people don't regret their abortions, but I would say a lot do. A lot do, and I've seen it over the years. And from a woman who spent so many years in darkness, when Christ exposed it to the light, it was...
The thing you're the most afraid of is the thing you actually need.
Right.
Yes.
You don't want to bring it into the light to let him see it because you feel the shame, but he's the one that takes the shame, and then you get the light.
So going back to the wound I was telling you about, I had that big gaping hole. It was festering. It was gross. And the Lord came in and said, girl, let me just get you some Clorox. I'm going to clean that up right there with my Jesus blood. I'm going to make it, and then I'm going to fill it with me, with my Holy Spirit, and I'm going to fill you. And then you and I are going to talk about things that bring me glory. Not me, Sarita, but me, Jesus. And that's exactly what I pray for women. Anybody who's hearing this, no matter what that gaping hole is caused by, abuse, because that's a whole different subject. Being raised by a narcissistic mother, that's a whole nother part of my testimony. When my fourth child was born, I was advised to have an abortion. That's a whole different side of my testimony. And so I have been the woman whose life was in crisis. In my life, I was a 50-50 shot of living. I've been the teenage girl. And so I've been there. And there's no judgment for me. So if you're a woman out there and you need healing, find a way to get some help.
And for those of you who are listening to our podcast, we have always opened up our email, the info@burrowsofberea.com. Send a message.
Yeah.
I'll send you to Sarita. We'll find somebody to you. Janice offered that in the last podcast. We don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, but I will get you the person that does.
I sat on the interstate
somebody with-
behind a wreck listening to her testimony. That was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we'll get you to somebody that can help. We'll make Sarita doesn't mind being busy for this.
Nope.
I guarantee it.
I don't mind being busy for Jesus. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Somebody get that girl a shirt. All right. Thank you so much
Thank you
for
so
being
much for
here.
having me.
It was wonderful to have you here. Thanks for being so honest.
Thank you.
It was really not. I didn't even know a quarter of it. And I'm glad you shared all of that. It's wonderful.
Well, that's not even a quarter of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing, and I think, as has kind of already been said, important for you to say out loud so that hopefully other people don't have quite the same experience as you. There's no way probably to make that easy, but knowing that people aren't alone is a big deal
Yeah.
in their experiences. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here. Cherry, as always, thank you. Andy,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
I love it. Well, we'll
But he
talk to
kind
you.
of has to be here, right?
Actually, I
true.
pay him to be here.
There you go.
But I think that he would do it. Nah, I'm just kidding.
Do you pay him to participate though?
I thought Elon Musk was paying
He
him.
actually does not have to participate. He can sit in there and just not be a part. But I asked him to be, and he's been kind enough to
Well,
sit in with
thanks,
us.
Andy.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
Ain't you
Yeah.
precious?
And just go back and
But I
listen
also
to
do
those
have to
episodes
pay rented bills and stuff. So.
when we gush on him sometimes, and he's like, enough. Like we love on him.
more.
Anyway, well, thanks, guys. We will talk to you again next time on the Burrows of Berea.
Cherry, could you turn that? All I see is the light and not you.
How's that?
That's perfect.
Yeah, we don't have to have any lights if we don't want them. We can sit in the dark.
Do it in the dark.
Yeah, buddy.
What do you do for a living, Rick?
I own a company called Acme Machine and a second company called OmniHawk.
I know Acme Machine.
You know it?
I used to be in trucking sales, and I used to call on Acme Machine way back, about 17 years ago.
Okay, so we own Acme Machine LLC, which is not that company.
Oh,
We've
okay.
only been in business for 6 years now.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we're launching our second company. Our new product is coming out May 1st, May 2nd.
What is new product?
Yeah.
It's our hatchet line.
Ooh.
So we
I
have
want a
we have
fancy hatchet.
Is this for the axe throwing companies, all these new businesses?
We actually are going to sponsor a tournament for axe throwing, but it's not axe throwing. They use hickory handles with little heads. This is a full steel wrapped in paracord, hardened to 58 Rockwell and sharpened. I mean, it will cut a piece of paper. It's so sharp, which is unusual for a hatchet. But what makes it awesome, and by the way, OmniHawk is going to sponsor Burroughs of Berea for 6 months.
Oh, cool.
They're gonna
Wow.
we're gonna do ads for them, which is
that's
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, they agreed on it in a board meeting the other day.
Oh, that's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
That's nice.
But what we sell in the system is we have a holster, but it's a click in, kind of like Glocks. Whenever you put a Glock in and it clicks in, the hatchet just goes click, and then you press a button and pull it out. And we can customize it in any color. So we're actually going to try to market this to girls.
So in the zombie apocalypse,
Yes.
I'll need it.
We're
There'll
gonna
be pink ones.
We
Yeah, I was
laugh and
thinking
say,
hot
pink
pink.
tax.
I
Yeah.
want Carolina blue.
see, and we can do Carolina. We can do the dark blue, light, Carolina blue and white, and wrap it, or with gray or whatever. So we can customize the wrap, and we can customize the holster.
People are
So-
going to be scared of me with I got my Glock on one hip and my
And you
hatchet
can,
on
and
the other.
please do it and take a picture of yourself in the grocery store. Open carry.
Yeah, South
I'm
Carolina's
multi-carrying.
open carry. Yeah.
Yeah. Are we rolling?
Yeah. We got it. We're going a while now.
All right.
Well, 4 minutes. A while might be pushing it.